getting inside.
This is introduction.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. So I just want to very quickly review yesterday. Very quickly, we introduced the idea of the new Seder Nashim, which effectively deals with marriage and the relationship between a man and a wife, and specifically a concept called Ishus. Ishus is the Hebrew version. It's a spiritual understanding of what actually exists between a husband and a wife. Ishus is something that is defined as a woman not being allowed to be with the entire world except her husband. Much like Klal Yisrael, when they make an item hegdish, a makdish, this thing, I take an animal and I make it hegdish, it's now only for Hashem. I'm not supposed to have any benefit from it. It's only for Hashem. So to a wife, it's called hegdish to you. She's kiddushin. That's kiddushin of what marriage is. And that's ishus. You're creating ishus. And so what we understood yesterday was that once we discussed that, you understand that a woman being usher unto the entire world except for this one man, that is effectively the definition of ishus. You understand then that when a woman and a man are married and a man dies, it says in the Mishnah Kiddushin says that the ishus is over. Either he gives her a get or he dies. It ends the ishus. And that yibum is a special halacha, because although we mentioned yesterday, we went through a whole slew of psukim and Yevamos where we discussed the list of all of the illicit relationships, and Hashem says one not only is not allowed to have, but the way we understand it in the Gemara is that those relationships are so beyond the pale. They're in their internal constitution, their spiritual makeup. There is no place for the key to fit the lock of Kiddushin. There is no way to make Kiddushin, to make Ishus with such a woman, meaning your mother, your daughter-in-law, your mother's mother, your mother's sister, your brother's wife, all of these things, these are kares relationships. These are so antithetical to the nature of the way Kiddushin and Ishus is set up, that if a man goes over to a woman who is one of these relationships, hands her a ring, says, I love you, Hareyat Mikudeshesli, in front of Eidim, and he did all of the acts. I said yesterday, it's like turning a switch on in a place that doesn't have the electricity turned on. You're doing something that looks like Kiddushin. It made Ishus, and therefore it looks like it's something, but the reality is you've done nothing. In fact, if a person is to have sex with such a woman and creates a baby out of that relationship, it is so antithetical to what Ishus is the byproduct of that marriage, that child is a mamzer. If you think about what the word mamzer, a mamzer, you ever hear the phrase mamzer? Yeah, we're good.
I thought a mamzer was only if it's a married.
No, that's just one of them. A married woman is one of the ones that we say.
A child with his sister, that's a
mamzer.
Mamzer.
Oh, so it's only with a
No. Mamzer is
it's not marital, it's out of marriage. Singles are not married. Only from Mariah, singles are not married.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. A single.
He said not yesterday. He said no. Yes.
No. Any doesn't matter. If she is an erva relationship to you, creates a mamzer.
But not
premarital.
Not premarital sex.
Yeah. Premarital sex, while it has many issues. Yeah. There's only one example of kares that actually does not create mamzer. That's a nida. A nida is and again, it's mostly because it's a temporary.
With your wife only, obviously.
Even with your wife, the child's not. If you have, it's called a ben nida. It's not a great thing, but it's not a mamzer. It's the only kares relationship that a baby that's produced is not a mamzer. If you just think about what the word mamzer means, muzar. It's from stranger. It's a relationship that does not have. There's no ability to make that kiddushin.
I understand why kiddushin doesn't catch these 7 ladies. Why does it catch on another lady, on another relationship that's also not allowed?
It's a very good question. There's actually an argument in the Tanoim about whether that's true, whether what I just said is true. Meaning, there's an opinion, Rabbi Akiva, who we don't hold like, at least in this context, who holds that even if it would just be a regular Aveira, let's say, for instance, a Kohen is not allowed to marry a Grusha.
Right. Why does that work?
That is Tofes, according to the Tanoim who argue on Rabbi Akiva.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
If that's what mamzer means, then why is it if a mamzer marries a mamzeres, does it get the same name? Technically, they didn't do anything wrong.
Right. So mamzer is not a punishment. It's just a
byproduct. Right?
It's a consequence
of. The second generation is a byproduct.
Yeah. Well, it's almost as if, and again, this is a very sensitive topic, but I would say that the way hashkafa, or really more the pnimius of what a mamzer is they really shouldn't exist. Meaning, really what we're saying is that a man is not supposed to marry such a
Right,
woman.
but now that they exist, we give them a way to get married, then they can marry another one, and then
That's-
we create a mamzer.
Yes, and it will stay that way forever unless
Not forever.
Um,
3 or 4 generations.
Forever.
no, that's something else. Yeah, that's something else.
Mamzerim don't eventually.
No.
No,
After a few generations.
no, that's something else. There's different people from different nations. There is a technical way for a mamzer to become no longer a mamzer, but not even him. Yeah, it's like through it's complicated. And I
What
don't
does
want
it
to
mean?
talk
You said the word again. What does it mean?
Mamzer?
Yeah.
Literal word is
Yeah.
usually translated as bastard, but really it's not. That's not really the
No,
right word
me
for it.
wants a me.
Yeah.
Oh, me muzar.
Yeah.
Me from
Yes.
muzar, something strange. So something.
Mom-
Why
Mamzer
is it used
man
as
marries
a
close to a lady,
it's a
what happens?
like a derogatory
Child
term.
mamzer?
You'll call other people.
Yeah, it implies you're a child of a low relationship. You know, it's like sort of
A regular man is not allowed to marry a mamzer.
Kevin, from a man or woman, mamzer or mamzeris, the child is a mamzer. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, as long as one of the parents are a mamzer or a mamzeris, the child is a mamzer or a mamzeris. Again, it's not a punishment. It's
No
just
matter how many generations later it stays.
yeah, it doesn't change. It always stays. Just try. It should, at a minimum, be a reflection of exactly what we mean when we say this woman is off limits.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, weiter. Calm, give me a weiter. Okay. So what we said yesterday was once we have that breakdown, we know that ishus that exists between a man and a woman is the unique relationship. The unique relationship that exists between a man and a woman is that the woman is not allowed to be to anyone else, only to him. It's clear that if that woman is one of these lists that he can't make kiddushin in, right? What if you have now a scenario where 2 brothers, right? One of them is married, let's say, and he dies without children. So now his wife, normally we say in the Mishnah Kiddushin says when you die, your wife goes free. But for some reason over here, the pasuk we read yesterday tells us that if he has a brother, it's the brother's responsibility to sort of continue the building of his home. He doesn't have any children. He falls his wife, let's say in this example, we'll have Reuben and Shimon. And Shimon is, married to Rachel. And Shimon dies. It's Reuben's responsibility to fill his shoes, to fill Shimon's shoes, and to take over his responsibility. We don't say that the oldest brother is ideal, but really all brothers, they have to.
Everyone has the same chiyuv.
Everyone has the same
all
chiyuv,
wives.
and all. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah. So therefore, what we said yesterday was that the chiddush of Yibum is one of the women listed in the Psukim and Achremos of these relationships that you cannot have ishus with is the wife of your brother. And let's say a regular scenario. I have Reuven and Shimon, brothers. And we'll just say Reuven's married to Rachel. And Reuven divorces Rachel. Is Shimon allowed to marry Rachel? No, he's not allowed to.
Or dies.
Or dies. Well, if he dies with no children, then it's Yibum.
Right.
If he has kids and he dies, then she's off limits. It doesn't matter. That erva, the arayos that exists, that
Ever.
relationship is forever.
There's
There's only one example,
Right.
that is somewhat temporary, which is the sister of your wife. Meaning you're not allowed to marry your wife's sister, but if you divorce your wife or if your wife dies, then you can marry her sister.
What if 2 brothers married 2 sisters?
That can happen? They cannot. It's actually one of the ones listed in the very first Mishnah.
2 brothers cannot marry 2 sisters?
They can.
can.
They can.
But
They
if
can.
one of them dies without kids, the other brother is in a bad situation.
Does a married man have a chiyuv of Yibum?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a man can have more than one wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
What is it? Is the mitzvah one time or it's to have a baby?
Good question. The mitzvah is to just be miyabim, to get married.
Then he could divorce.
You could if you want to. She's your full-fledged
You
wife.
don't
You
have
have
to
to
have
give her
anything. You don't know. Right. That's the
You
question.
have to give her a get.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get married, at that point, she's like no different than a regular wife, where she'll need all of the normal rules.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a Rabbi Gershom? Let's say you're married.
Chaim Derim and Gershom Institute for Ashkenazim, so you're free to go.
It's
it was-
over anyway.
It's over after the
If
year
one brother
5000.
dies,
But
and
his
then
question
marries
was
another brother,
good.
what if that brother dies? Is there another chiyuv Yibum with the
Now,
next
Cal's
brother?
question
Is it
is,
7 brothers? She's gonna marry 7 brothers?
Yes.
What happens to
You actually just introduced the Mishnah perfectly, by the way. And that is literally
what happens to today? With the Chaim Rabbi Gershom?
We don't do Yibum.
We don't do Yibum today.
we anyways don't do
We do
even for
chalitza today.
we do chalitza. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not very common, but
Chalitza
yeah, it happens.
shoe
Yeah.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah. It's a real
There's
deal.
a shoe. There's a leather shoe. Some, I think we're finding out.
Is
So
it
this kasha is the kasha.
I know.
If you had a Maisa Bia, but it didn't work, you don't have to do it again.
It's
crazy.
If you had a Maisa
You
Bia
said that,
And
there's
she
no
get pregnant.
child.
and she didn't get pregnant,
If Yibum
Well, she's your wife.
Yeah,
But now it's your wife. You say
Yeah, but you
yeah, no,
don't have any more.
yeah. Well, here let's take his question and flip it a little bit, just to to wrap our head around some of the complications of Yevamos. What happens if she can't have babies?
Well, why do we do Yibum after a certain age?
Meaning, well, that's sort of what I'm.
The same thing you're saying. Let's say the kid can't have.
If the woman's 70, we know she's not having a child.
Was this
why
what
do
you
we
you
do
said?
Yibum?
You mentioned this to me yesterday. Someone
Yeah.
mentioned to me. Yeah, you asked an older couple who. Yeah.
Back then.
Now.
Today we do cleats, so we don't do
My
you.
father-
No. What he means is,
But
Why is there
Why
e-
would Yibum even be on the table?
an 80-year-old man never had kids. He was married to his wife. She was
Well, the
married.
man
She,
could have kids at 80. It's the woman that's the problem.
what I'm saying, but she's barren. They lived their whole life, and now all of a sudden he dies.
Wow.
And his 82-year-old,
Crazy. It's nice to
his
be in it.
82-year-old almana is falls to his younger brother, his 72-year-old brother. Even okay, let's okay. So that was what we discussed yesterday. What we established yesterday is that the unique concept of Yibum is that the mitzvah of Yibum, when the Torah says that this woman who is typically your erva, right? Again, Reuven and Shimon. Shimon is married to Rachel, and Rachel, Shimon dies. And now Reuven, who normally is not allowed to marry Rachel, if he married Rachel yesterday before his brother died, or if, let's say, his brother gave a get and then he married her or he had sex with her, we would say he's chayv kares. The child from that relationship is a mamzer. And all of a sudden, the brother dies without kids. And now, not only is it not a mamzer, not only is it not usher, the Torah says you're going to get schar, you're going to get to olam haba. They're going to say, good job. You did a great thing in going and having sex with your sister-in-law. That's the mitzvah of Yibum. That's the chiddush of Yibum. The chiddush of Yibum is that we, let's say, there's different ways to say it without sounding too much like a yeshiva shalamdin. Either the avera of that Ashes Ach was not said in this scenario where the Torah said you have to do a mitzvah of Yibum. That would be something called hutra. It was completely removed, excised from reality. It's like when the Torah said, don't be with your Ashes Ach, parenthetically, only if he doesn't have any children, if he has children or he divorces her. But if he has children, doesn't have children, then this Isser was never said. Or did we say no? The Isser is always there and comes along the mitzvah and pushes it. It's doche. It pushes it away. We'll get to this in the first parak. It's going to be a theme we'll discuss. Is the mitzvah of Yibum that you're allowed to be with your sister-in-law, is that something that we understand it to mean that the entire Isser is completely not said in this scenario? Or no, it's there. It's just that there's a temporary and potentially long-term dispensation that you have to specifically be with her. What would be the nafkamina of those things? Well, we'll get to that as we get through the Gemara. Okay, so that's the next step. So the next step is we're discussing the idea that despite the fact that there's a kares relationship, the Torah's chiddush of Yibum is no, you have a responsibility to fill his shoes. And if you want to try to wrap your head around the idea, once you understand that it's not you acting, you're really acting on behalf of your brother, really all you're doing is stepping into his shoes, so to speak, continuing the ishus that he created. In fact, I forget who said it. I think it's the Granat. It's a long time ago. They basically explained that when your brother made the Kiddushin, however many years ago it was when they got married, that was your Maisa Kiddushin also, meaning when he did that, and now he's dead, leaving over no kids. So what is it that's connecting you to this woman? That act he did then included in it this potentiality of, if I should die with no kids, this also works for my brothers.
Wow.
That's the way it's sort of spoken out a little bit, just to wrap your head around. That means the moment the brother dies, there is a standing level of ishus, kedusha, marriage that exists. Yesterday we termed it zika. Zika is just the Hebrew word to define it, and we'll see in the very lengthy conversation about whether there is yesh zika or ain zika. We said yesh zika, ain zika is effectively how far do we take that ishus? Is it like regular marriage? Is it the exact same thing as if a man goes and gives kesef kedusha to a woman and says harei mikudeshesli, meaning a get might work, or meaning now he's usher on her sister, all of the normal halachas you would treat a wife, whatever those normal halachas are. What is he chayiv to her in at that point? Meaning, what is that status? Yesh Zika says we take it here, and Ein Zika says we only take it here.
But everybody agrees it's a bond.
There's definitely a bond. And that bond is a consequence of the Torah saying, she is not allowed to be to anyone but you. Now, by you here means any of the brothers, but she is not allowed to be to anyone but you meaning the brothers of the dead husband, that limits her to the rest of the world. That's what creates this bond. That is the continuation of the bond the brother had. So, okay.
if she's pregnant and then has a miscarriage?
Fantastic question. We'll get to it. It's a much more complicated.
My wife.
Yeah, fantastic question. I mean, it's really,
My
no, it's
wife's
a,
question.
well, okay, fantastic wife. Yeah, tell your wife,
She has a
great.
miscarriage.
So what does Zika mean again?
The question is, she's still
The
pregnant.
word itself means connected, but in our context, it's the relationship that exists between the widow,
Husband dies.
the one left over with no
Yeah.
kids, and the
But
brother.
she felt that-
Yeah.
It's a standing level of connection.
It's status, the minute he dies.
The moment he dies,
before he does the
yeah,
walk.
right? At that moment in time, they're trying to, I don't know if you remember chemistry when you were a kid, try to imagine like a carbon atom and a hydrogen atom have a line in between it, like a, what do they call it? A valence bond. I forget what it's called, right? That line, that bond that connects them, keeps them from floating. Yeah. That's a very non-scientific way to describe it. That's similar to what you have here. The moment he dies, there's a bond, a zika with every one of
The
the
brothers.
brothers. And if there's more than one wife, each of the brothers also have that same zika with those
Wife, but one of the wives have a kid. Does it go
from a
on
previous
the other
marriage,
one? No.
from her own
Yeah,
putter.
and even though
If he has any child, all of them are knocked out. Yeah. And well, actually, it's a good question because it's a good segue to the next idea.
Which brother gets the,
The oldest that goes down.
Technically speaking, any one of them can jump ahead and do it if he does it.
What do you mean anyone?
Any one of them comes and makes the Maisa Yibum up for grabs. It's ideally supposed to be the oldest brother, but really that's not like
Is
set in
Zika gonna be
stone.
a common term that we're gonna be using in Yevamos?
For what?
Just in terms of the relationship between, I'm saying within the Gemara.
With between who?
I'm saying between the
Like specifically the older
wife
brother?
and the brothers, or
Yes. So we've been discussing wife and brother. So yeah, so the woman who dies, she's called the Yevama. That's where the phrase Yevamos comes from, many Yevamas. And the man is called the Yavam. Simple, right? Yevamos are the relationship between the Yavam and the Yevama. She's also referred to as a Shomeres Yibum, but it's basically the same idea. And the act that occurs between them to consummate their marriage is called Yibum, and it's sex. That is the only way to do Yibum. Yibum is just a fancy word for the first time these two people have sex. Now, when one of the brothers has sex with one of the wives, the whole thing is over. And now those two people are married. Every one of the other wives are free to go marry whoever they want. The only people they can't marry are his brothers.
if you could do a kedushin more than one wife, why can't we do Yibum?
Good question. Yeah, that's a Masechta Kedushin first Mishnah topic. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we've established what Yibum is in terms of the act. Now, this Zika relationship that exists, we've established that it is effectively just a quasi-ishus, it's a quasi-marriage, this Zika, that exists as soon as he dies. It can be removed in one of two ways. It can either be consummated through Yibum, or it can be ended through something we call chalitza. In fact, we'll read in the pasuk that we saw yesterday. The very next pasuk, after the pasuk we read yesterday, says, "V'im lo yachpo ta'ish," and if the man does not want has to take es yevimto, his sister-in-law, meaning the widow, the also yevimto hashar el haskenim, she then goes to the gate in the city in front of the skenim, v'amra, and she says the following. This line is important. Ma'in yevami lahakim la'achav shem Yisrael. My Yevami, my brother-in-law, decided he doesn't want to establish his brother's name in Israel. Lo ava yami, he doesn't want me. Lo zikne iro, they call to him. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and it says the following. She takes the shoe, it says over here, v'cholza na'olo me'al raglo, she goes over, takes off his shoe, and it says over here, v'yarka b'fanav, and she spits on the ground. The unsa, and she says, "V'amra." He's wearing the. Well, it says here she takes off his shoe.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know if that means he has to put it on and she takes it off, or if there's. I'm not exactly sure about that. But the way the psukim describe it is that she takes off his shoe, spits on the ground, and says the following.
Raglot means his leg.
Ragloi.
Raglot.
Al ragloi. The yarka b'fanav. She spits on the ground, and she says the following. And this line's really important. Kacha, this is going to sound a little like Purim. I'm trying to find the Torah to connect it to. Kacha yeyasel ish, right? That's literally the language that we say when it says Haman's supposed to go and talk about Mordechai. And to me, this was like
the king.
This is what, this is what you're supposed to do. The person that the king is.
Right.
So Kacha yeyasel ish, asher lo yivne es, and here's the key line: es beis achiv. This is important. What's happening by chalitza is it's ending this zika bond. It's ending this connection that exists between the Yavam and the Yevama, right? And now she's mutter to the whole world, except for all the other brothers. Because again, once the Yibum Parsha is over, well then, okay, Isser, the Eishes Ach, that comes right back. Who are all these wives to this guy, to the brothers? That was my dead brother's wife. Well, that Isser is forever. It's a special heter, a special concept that while there's the Zika bond, the brothers are mutter to be with the woman, and they can make marriage with her. They could take over the brother's Ishas. If, on the other hand, he chooses to not do that, let's say there's one brother, we'll keep it simple. We're talking about Ruvain here. Shimon's dead. Rachel, his widow, is waiting to, what's Reuven going to do? Reuven says, sorry, I don't like you. I don't like the way you cook. It's not for me. She goes to the gate of the city. She takes off her shoe, spits on the ground and says, this is what happens to the man who chooses not, and here's the key line, he does not want to build his brother's house. Base achiv. And that word base in the Gemara is understood to be referring to not a relationship between Ruvain and Rachel. Rachel represents base Shimon, meaning, let's say there's a Leah, let's say there's a Sarah, let's say there's a Miriam. They're all part of base Shimon, meaning base Shimon is who
All the way.
falls to the brothers. They fall collectively, meaning to say they all have this Zika bond. Now that's important because it's not just a specific thing where each and one of them have a unique individual relationship now with, let's say, Reuven in this case. Why? Because if all it was an individual thing, then we really shouldn't care if one of them, let's say, is an erva, which we'll get to in the Mishnah, right? We shouldn't care. Meaning, each one of them have to find their own way out of the Zika. If we understand that it's not their own personal Zika, it's their own personal bond, it's the bond of the house of Shimon and the brother. And if any one of those people cannot do Yibam, not because they physically can't, but because they're not in the parsha of Ishus with the brother, meaning they're one of those people listed in the Mishnah, the Psukim we just discussed, daughter, daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, your mother's mother, all of those different people that you can't have bia with, right? Since those relationships are so beyond the pale that they create a mamzer, there's no place for ishus with those women. If one of those women happened to be married to the brother that just died and now leaves over that wife to you, childless, where normally we would say there's a mitzvah yibum, you have to be with her. Well, if she is someone who falls into that category where you can't have ishus with her, then it's as if the Torah was saying, in this scenario, there's no yibum.
For all wives.
And once it's for one of the women, because this rule applies to base Shimon, to the whole home, so he could have 12 wives. And if 11 of them are good to you, that's great. But if one of them is an erva to you, the whole Yibum thing falls off.
But another brother can.
1 second. So one step at a time. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
The short answer is
You
yes.
don't have to do it. It's automatic.
So for you, so
Right.
let's say this scenario of always Reuven and Shimon,
You.
Shimon dies, leaves those 12 wives. If
One is not
Reuven
right.
if Shimon happened to marry Reuven's daughter, let's say he
Yep.
married his niece.
Yep.
So Reuven's a much younger brother or whatever, much older brother. So he has a daughter that's similar age to his younger brother. His younger brother goes and marries his daughter. Every Pesach they're spending time together. That you know each other, they got married. And Reuven's daughter had a opportunity to side of he's dead, and his wife, the daughter of Reuven, is now she can't marry her father.
Right.
So therefore, the Yibum thing just poof goes away. It's like it was never stated. And what does that mean? And here I'm just speaking it out. It's very ABCs, but I think it's just established. Not only is Reuven not allowed to be with that girl because, let's be honest, it's his daughter. She's also the wife of his brother. Meaning, if let's say Reuven jumped the gun and said, whatever, I'm going to marry her. He goes and has sex with that woman. How many Averas has he been over on? What has he done? He certainly slept with his daughter. Okay, so let's put that on the side. That's a terrible thing. He's also slept with his brother's wife. Because again, if Yibum is not being said, if there is no opportunity for Yibum, then the normal rules apply. What is she? She is a former wife of my brother, which is always going to be usher. Right?
Two ervas.
Oh, okay. So that's an important understanding because now what happens if, and here's where the sheets I think are going to be helpful. My sheets.
One second, man. For some clarification.
Oh.
Under from Yibum and that Yibum status, does that cancel each other out?
No. And I'm not sure what you're asking 100%. If I think what you're asking is the distinction between one not being chayiv in Yibum and whether there is even a Zika relationship that exists when you don't have to do Yibum.
Right.
So what you're touching on is, I think, so this is actually an answer to a question. Well, why is Yevamos so hard? People think Yevamos is so hard because I can't keep track of all of the different people. It's so hard. And it is hard for that. This will address that issue, hopefully, for us. Yeah. But I actually think the hardest part of Yevamos, is really keeping your head on the swivel, so to speak, and recognizing when is it that when someone can't do Yibum, it means there's no Zika now, or when does it mean they have to do a Chalitza? Meaning, I just said that, well, if she's an Erva, a daughter, I just said it as a stubborn question. It's the first Mishnah in Yevamos, we'll get to it in a minute, or at least we'll discuss the concept of it in a minute. What if she is, let's say, a physically immature girl? I mean, she has never developed the normal ways of a woman. She's 14 years old, and not only can she not have a baby, she will never have a baby. She has a physical ailment, an islandness. I'm picking it. Islandess is really 20 years old, but whatever. The point I'm trying to say is that this is a woman who you could never build a home with, right? There's no mitzvah sibum for an islandess is the term for such a woman.
You have to do chalitza?
You have to do chalitza.
Oh, you have to do chalitza.
Now, I would ask, just as a layperson, what's the difference between her
That
and a
the other
daughter?
one, right.
They both, you can't be with them, right? Well, let's say it even better. You might say, well, and part of the reason why I gave the hakdama the way I did is you might say, well, it's very simple. You can marry an islandess.
Correct.
You can't marry your daughter. Meaning, if I would ask you a little bit differently, I would say, what happens if you have two brothers, they're Kohanim, or right, they're Kohanim, and let's say Shimon dies, leaving over one of his wives becomes a zona or something like that. Let's say she does an act that makes her a zona, which now makes her usher to be with the brother who's a Kohen. So he was allowed to be with her because when he married her, she wasn't a zona, and then she did something to make her a zona afterwards. So now he's dying, and now I have a woman who is falling to him. He's not allowed to be with her. It's a deraisa of not being with the zona. Or to say that she's a grusha won't make sense because, or better yet, let's say Shimon dated an avera and he's a Kohen and he married a grusha. He's not supposed to do it, but if he marries her, they're married, and now he dies. That falls to Yibum. So you're touching on already. Now we're getting to Daf Dalet Hein Vav. We'll get to that. Do we say that, well, they're not allowed to be together, so maybe there's no mitzvah Yibum?
Right.
So what would we tell him to do in that scenario? We would certainly tell him don't do Yibum because that's usher, but he needs to do Chalitza. Why don't we say over there the same thing like I just said? Well, you're not allowed to be with her, just like you're not allowed to be with your daughter. Therefore, there's no. So the answer again will almost always come down to, can you marry her? Let's say in another scenario, is this a woman who, if I married her, it would work? If the answer is yes,
it's an avera.
Meaning I'm not allowed to marry a grusha if I'm a Kohen.
Well,
but if I did marry her, will it take effect?
Yeah, but father is not allowed to be married daughter.
Right.
That's not the reason.
But I'm asking you in terms of
No. He may not be allowed to, but even if he wanted, let's say he wanted to say, you know what, Hashem, I love you, but I want to marry her anyways. Right? He lives in Bumble Plip, Alabama. He's like, I want to marry my daughter. Yeah.
Seems about right.
Okay, so he hands her over a Kesef Kiddushin in front of two kosher Eidim. He finds the last two kosher Eidim in Alabama,
You're
and he
asking,
says,
is the marriage halakhically okay?
no, it doesn't
Is that
exist.
how it works?
Marriage cannot be made between a man and one of the women listed in Nachrimus. His daughter, his daughter-in-law, his mother, his mother-in-law, his mother, his mother.
Or just something, a statement we're trying to make?
No, I'm just trying to establish. He asked the question, but it's bringing up this point. Yeah, it's bringing up this idea that the understanding of when Yibum is completely not even happening, and therefore it is when the relationship of one of the women in the brother's home is so beyond the pale, you couldn't make Kiddushin with her to begin with. Like daughter. Daughter is a good example. Daughter is the example we're going to go to in a minute. But okay, so now.
Like Rush is saying no, because you can't.
Exactly.
Right.
If you could make Kiddushin with her, if it would be, even if you're not supposed to,
Right.
we're going to have to get into the habit of making the distinction between what you should do and what you can do.
No.
What do you?
that's
Okay,
the
no. Let's get to no. I want to. This is important. The reason for the Hakdama is to dispel myths that we have that come in. They creep into our consciousness from the outside world.
The best way to phrase it is when can you not do actual Kedushin?
Say it better. When can the Kedushin you do not take effect?
Yeah.
I could do it all day. Here's a kesef for you, kesef for you, kesef for you. What's with the cars? You know what's the name?
Yeah.
I'll make Kedushin with you. I'll make Kedushin with you. Where is the Kedushin going to land? if the person giving it to, it's just in the lashon of the Gemara, we would say, is she a bas ishus? Does she have the capability of forging this bond with me? Well, if she's my daughter, she doesn't. I can hand her the kesef gidushin all day in front of the kosherest Adam in the world, in the biggest wedding hall that's ever existed, with 1,000 people there, and that is nothing. All I've done is handed her a gift. Okay. So,
And that's also the 15 others in the Mishnah, right?
yes, not just daughter. Daughter's just an example. Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you now, it's not just 15, there's 21 of them. It's just that the 15 in the Mishnah are the only ones that it's possible that they could ever even fall to me in Yibum. Because, for instance, mother. My mother is usher to my brother, whether it's his mother or it's his father's wife. So you'll never have a scenario where Reuven and Shimon will be married. Shimon will be married to someone who is Reuven's mother. It cannot happen. Because when Shimon tries to marry Reuven's mother and hands her kesef kiddushin, it just won't work. Because who is Reuven's mother? Either Shimon's mother, because they're brothers from the mother, or if let's say they're only brothers from the father, it's Shimon's father's wife, his other wife. Well, that's the other one on the list. So since that can't, so our Mishnah, the first Mishnah, which is discussing the list of the Rayos, in regards to the mitzvah of Yibum, are only going to look at ones that it's possible. Daughter is possible. Why? Because Shimon can marry his niece. Meaning Reuven's daughter, Rachel, went and married her uncle. That's mutter. You're allowed to do that. A little bit uncouth in our days, but it's allowed. Meaning Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven has a daughter. She likes her uncle. The uncle makes kiddushin, and they're married. Now, what happens if Shimon dies? Well, okay. Now, all of a sudden, Shimon's wife, Rachel, also Reuven's daughter, now falls to him in Yibum. And the answer is no, she doesn't. Because since she is one of these illicit relationships, the entire parsha of Yibum just wasn't said in this scenario.
Before the Torah was given, that was allowed, though?
No. I mean, again, before the Torah was given, it's a little bit more complicated. But yeah, no.
You didn't have to marry a brother.
Yeah. Before the Torah was given, Yibum was a much more expanded idea. It expanded to cousins and even your father. Yeah, it's a little bit different.
The kiddushin between the uncle and the niece is one of the 15 cases that's not good.
No, the uncle and niece are good,
Right.
but when the uncle dies and his wife, who is the
Right,
niece
and then
of
the
his
brother
brother,
is
now his daughter. His
Right.
daughter is falling to him. Well, I can't marry his daughter. If a guy can't marry his daughter,
right.
then there's no yibum, there's no zika that exists. Remember, zika is the existence of ishus. Ishus is a concept. So that ishus has to have a place. If the woman is to the yavam, right, to the brother-in-law, the surviving brother, if the woman to the surviving brother has one of these types of relationships that don't allow ishus, daughter, mother, mother-in-law, whatever these things are, then the zika can't exist. There's no zika. When there's no zika, she's free to go. There's no yibum required. There's no chalitza required. It's when there is a possibility for kiddushin with that woman that the zika is still there. Now you might be also to do the yibum. Okay, then you got to do chalitza. But if the zika bond is gone because the relationship is not possible, then she's free to go. There's no yibum. There's no chalitza. She's what we say she's petura. She's pater from yibum. There's no zika bond. Okay, so that is referred to as an erva. Now there's something called litzara. So the pasuk in one of the arayas, just read it out over here, is.
I don't have that sheet.
No, this is my
No,
sheet.
it's
This is
his
my
own
sheet.
sheet.
Yeah. No, this would be
No one
confusing.
gets that
The
sheet.
pasuk, one of the arayos, you can have it. I had someone called me last night for my notes. I'm not telling you. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So why don't
Wow.
you can just post it to the, no?
Yeah, I don't care.
People really want
What
it.
is his own notes? What is this?
Yeah. I mean, it's written. It's written logically.
Or not?
Yes.
Why not?
Yeah, I get. I mean, I took a picture of it. Okay. One of the arayos, guys. Yeah, I'm done with it. Very important. Yeah. One of the arayos that's listed in the Mishnah, not Mishnah, in the Psukim and Achemos, is your wife's sister, which uniquely is the only one we said before that is a temporary one, because once you divorce your wife, or if your wife dies, you can now marry her sister, right? Much in the same way that, not exactly the same when a brother dies, all of a sudden, a previous avera, which is to be with your brother's wife, is now mutter. It's also mutter when you divorce or your wife dies, you can now be with her sister. It's called, right? Achos ishto, the sister of your wife. So the Torah, when it refers to that unique mitzvah that you're not allowed to be with your sister's wife, the way it says it is, while married to your wife, you cannot marry her sister. And this is the way the pasuk reads.
Wasn't there a time that married a sister right after the person, like the sister passed away at the funeral?
Could be,
Yeah.
yeah, which would make sense, meaning you're at least allowed to do that. Yeah. Now, there are other issues there of you have to make sure, you have to wait a certain amount of time to make sure that she's not pregnant, because then you'll have
Your
questions
weight
about
doesn't
who's.
fall. It doesn't happen right away. You have to wait. You're saying
You're
this
supposed to wait. I
time.
mean, you're supposed to wait 3 months, I think, so to make sure that.
Oh, it's 3 months?
But it's a purely practical reason, because we won't be able to know. I mean, we will genetically, because we can
No, in
test.
that case, he would be mutter because she died. She is not Shiloh.
Is that how you know if you're showing after 3
I think it's
months?
mutter.
Yeah.
What's that?
Is that how you know if you're showing after 3 months?
Yeah.
That's only this
That's-
full
So you have
life.
to wait
Yeah,
3 months to do this mitzvah.
No.
It only applies when it's a
It's-
woman
she's still alive.
from multiple men. When it's talking about 2 women, it's different. Okay, 1 second. So let's.
The lady died. You don't have to wait 3 months.
No, not the lady died. The husband died. You have to wait 3 months to do the mitzvah, he's saying. You can't, doesn't do it for 3 months.
No.
No.
I made a mistake. No. What I was referring to when you have two brothers, and you need to figure, like for instance, you need to figure out
Who's the father?
who the father is. I mean, we have genetics to tell us, but let's say you have 2 brothers, right? Brother dies, and
Right.
now he leaves over a wife who's, we think, childless. We
Right.
need to establish that she's truly childless. And what happens if she's pregnant and she's not showing?
So how do you
Right.
establish that?
You wait.
You wait 3 months.
Wait.
So you can't do the mitzvah even for 3
You have to
months.
wait
I'm
at least
asking.
3 months. Yeah.
So what is that status called in between?
Your Zika.
Zika.
That's
Got it.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, but it's suffix Zika. You say maybe she's pregnant.
Maybe she, but it's still, it's a
Oh,
suffix.
every time you
She
do,
might not be
every
a
time you do, you have to wait 3 months.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, unless there's like extenuating circumstances that say.
Says that in the Gemara, talks about that time.
I'm not 100% sure if the time is discussed, but I'm pretty sure that's
Because you won't know who if it's from the.
you won't know which child it is.
Who's
Even
who-
though the entire mitzvah is about making your brother's child have a place in the world, but we need to know whose actual child it is.
Okay.
Are there implications during that waiting period of things that happen? or-
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Let's say, I'll give you an
Is he
example.
allowed to marry? Is a brother allowed to marry somebody? Let's say he's not married and he's waiting in 3 months. What
Yeah.
happens?
You can have
You
12
could have-
wives.
you could have 10 wives.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question though. Is he allowed to marry the sister of the woman who he's connected to? Good question.
Right, amazing, right.
Right. So let's say you have Reuven and Shimon.
No relationship. It's not Arab, it's nothing. Right.
Reuven and Shimon are allowed to marry sisters, right? So let's say Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Shimon is married to Rachel. Okay. Now
Shimon dies.
So now Reuven has to do Yibum with Rachel. He's got to wait a couple months for whatever reason. He's away. He was on a business trip for 6 months. He can't do the
Meets his
Yibum.
sister out of nowhere.
And
right.
while he's hanging out in Paris, he runs into Leah. Likes Leah. Leah seems like a nice girl. Is he allowed to marry Leah? Number one. If he marries Leah, does it even take hold? Is it one of the ones? This is
Is it Arab?
right. Now, normally, if someone's married, we say when you try to make marriage with her sister, it doesn't take hold. It's one of those
Right.
listed.
Got it. Wow.
This we call that achos ishto.
Right.
So what about achos skukaso? What about the
This is what-
sister of your Zika? Well, if
And
Zika
then-
is true, if Zika is truly like marriage, it should be the same. You can't have kedushin. That is a huge topic of conversation.
got it.
Huge topic
Got
of
it.
conversation.
And
in
do you have a
Yevamos.
child with that sister? Is that child the mom?
Is a mamzer? Fantastic question. Right. So probably not, but the question is why?
But-
Meaning, what if we find out that kedushin is not tofus in such a woman? What if you hold yesh zika, which is what that would mean? Yesh zika means it's like ishus, this real marriage here that exists,
Right.
and then you have a child. If that child is not a mamzer, we have to work hard to figure out why.
Mm.
Why would that child not be a mamzer if I tried to make kedushin in her and the kedushin is not tofus? What's up?
You can't say that the Kiddushin is chal because he wasn't ball her.
You're asking a
Because the
question, or
entire act
is this
of-
specifically what are you referring to? Because we just had a lot of stuff.
Zika creates this bond, but it's not a Kiddushin because you can't. It's like the act of Kiddushin must take place.
So as I mentioned before, and what I mentioned before is just one of the ideas that are mentioned is the general understanding is, or one understanding is that the brother, before he died, the Kedushin he made, that Kedushin works even for this. Meaning that,
you can't hold that because if you say that it was, it can.
no, some people do hold it. I mean, you can argue with it. I'm
But
just saying.
if you create an actual marriage, then she's both married to her brother and married to him, which is us.
No,
You can't say that.
no. It's much more subtle than that.
Right.
It's much more subtle. Ruvain made Kedushin, hands
Yeah.
Kesef over to a woman. Harei Mekudeshesli.
Right.
He just created Ishus.
Right.
What does that mean? That means that at that moment in time, he created a bond. In that bond is, as long as I'm alive, I'm your husband.
Yeah.
The moment I die, he's your husband.
If
That was created then.
But can you
So
say
now when the brother dies,
Yeah.
this thing we're calling Zika was created. This was not just poof out of nowhere. This was already created 3 years ago when Reuven married his sister.
what I'm saying
is
is that
what?
Zika can't be like a real meaning if you can't be like a real marriage.
You're doing what we'll do when we get to the sugya of Yesh Zika and Zika.
Okay.
It's a huge conversation.
Okay.
This would be like,
Right.
portion. Yes, no, like it's
we can't
Real
have something
quick.
mom. Do you have something moms?
of course,
Oh,
of course.
you
Oh,
can have
absolutely.
something.
Yeah.
Suffolk
Mamzer. Again, another huge.
I'm just saying because you don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
If you married,
You can have a
sister
Suffolk
and you don't
mamzer,
know
it's
what's
a-
going- and maybe
Yeah,
she's
100%.
pregnant, and then it's
Yeah,
not
what
a
about if
mamzer.
it's a sveikas? You have two sveikas. We'll get this.
You have sex beforehand and then perform Yibum, right?
No,
The sex
is
Yeah,
the
the
act of
between
Yibum.
the brother.
That's the act of Yibum?
That's
Yeah.
the act of Yibum is the sex act itself.
Yep.
Okay, so we just explained erva. Now let's talk about tsaras erva. What's a tsaras erva?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's two of them.
Yeah, two.
Second
We
one,
just
no,
changed
no,
the word.
second one.
Don't keep going straight.
Go to the farthest,
The
the co-wife. And I'm going to try to use the English in the beginning, but I really want to habituate us to start using the Hebrew terms. Just like when we went through Tzum and Tara, I never said impure. I said tame, because we got used to it. We're going to do the same thing here. And in the beginning, it's going to feel a little bit like, what's he saying? But trust me, getting habituated toward the sprach is going to help. Towards the language is going to help. Okay. So what is a erva? It's one of those listed. If she falls, again, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Shimon is married to, Shimon is married to one of Reuven's relatives. Shimon dies. There's no yibum. We've established that. She's an erva. Now, what if Shimon's married to two women? We'll say Rachel and Leah. Okay. Let's say Rachel is Reuven's daughter. Right? Shimon married Reuven's daughter.
They're brothers.
Two daughters. Yeah. We're gonna have to suspect. Listen, your
All right, 'cause
your
I'm
comfort
okay.
around inappropriate relationships
It's not. No, it's
is
not
going
that.
to have to be suspended from Masech
Listen,
Yevamos. There's going to be a lot of uncles marrying their nieces. And
I'm getting in these books. It always starts with the Reuven being the one who marries the person.
yeah. I'm just doing it for the sake of
You go
explaining
back
here.
that way because that's the most.
So which way would you like me to do it?
Reuven, the first step. Is
Who's dying?
Reuven is the one who married. He dies.
Okay.
Reuven is
You
the
want
first
Reuven
one.
to be the one dying?
That's what it is.
Oh, is that what it is in the
In
books?
Edward.
Okay, so we'll do it that way. Okay.
Or Reuben.
Yeah, Reuven's going to be
Reuven
dying.
married a woman.
Okay.
Shimon
So is
married
that
a
true?
woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Reuven
married
is
a
the one
woman.
that's dying. Okay. So
Reuven-
So Reuven goes and marries
Shimon's
Shimon's daughter. So Reuven is married to Rachel and Leah, and Rachel is Shimon's daughter. So Reuven married his niece Rachel. Now, who's-
Randall? Sorry,
And Leah's Aranda.
Leah's.
Rachel is right. And the exercise here of not having a chart while we do this is helpful because if you're looking at a chart while we do this, you're always going to be stuck to the chart. The chart,
When you
trust-
say these
trust
things,
me-
Reuben, Shimon, yeah,
trust me, it's worth it to try.
Don't you think Reuven?
Try to imagine it in your
Reuven
head.
married someone. Reuven married two people.
Okay,
Let's see
but
that.
I need to see it.
Why?
Well, you see
I
it.
don't
Reuven
know.
married.
My brain doesn't.
Just try. I'm telling you,
Reuven
it's an effort. It's an effort. It's an effort that's worth
My
it.
son tested positive in YU.
No,
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, crazy. It's the third time he had Omicron already. I didn't even make any sense.
What?
He has to come home. They still test on
Still
YU every
now?
week. Yeah.
Once a week.
By the way, I don't know what to say. Adam told me he tested positive last night also.
Then,
The attorney comes to Mincha Marab.
oh boy, he was so careful.
I didn't believe him.
No, you got
My son, you know how many times he tested positive? He used to go to Hungary and he tested. It's crazy.
He feels fine?
He's fine. But YU makes you test every single week still.
I guess you got the
Wow.
booster. I didn't get the booster.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, no,
Okay, so Reuven married.
Okay. Shh. We'll talk about Omicron after.
Reuven married.
Who has two wives? Reuben or Shimon?
Reuven.
All right, guys, we got to bring it back. This is the last day of the Akdama.
Okay,
Tomorrow we're back.
Reuven
Tomorrow
married.
I want to get these ideas down. Okay, Reuven is the one who married two sisters. Okay, sorry, he married two girls. One of them is Shimon's daughter.
Yes.
Okay, so that means he married his niece, Shimon's daughter.
I'm sorry, Dara. Yeah.
Okay, now Reuven dies, no, childless. So now these two women are technically, theoretically, going to now become
Shimon.
the Yevamos of Shimon the Yavam.
One of them is daughter.
But how one of them is his daughter.
Right.
Now, we said before that if all we had was just that daughter, Yibum's gone.
Yeah.
But the other girl doesn't have a problem. The other girl is completely unrelated to Shimon.
Gone.
Doesn't matter. Now, let's try to understand why. Meaning the Torah says, there's a pasuk. We darshan a pasuk. The pasuk says, it says like this. It says, V'isha el achosa lo sikach, and here's the key word, litzror. That when you have two wives married to each other, they're called tsaros. Tsaros in Hebrew means like they bother each other. But the understanding is they're connected. And
I was
again,
gonna say because they're both married. Both of them are married to Reuben. Or
in this case, yeah.
I'm just saying, just the fact that they're both married to. I mean,
But again,
therefore
they
they should
could
have a chiyuv,
they could both be married to Reuven, but that does not mean they're like a basket together. Why don't we say that each one of them have a unique scenario?
I'm saying they're both individually.
Yes. So if one of them's an erva, does the other one still have the mitzvah yibum?
Why? Just because one isn't, therefore the other one.
Exactly. You're right. So that is exactly what I would have thought had the Torah not said litzra. Guys. The side talk makes it impossible for me to do what I'm trying to do. If you have questions, bring them here. The side questions makes what I'm doing a waste of time. Okay. All right. I love it, but it's wonderful. But it's just
So that one wife is the one. I mean, she still had. I mean, regardless.
What I would say is pay attention to what he's saying because I'm more than likely addressing what you're gonna touching on here.
Yeah. So I'm saying that one wife is still chiyuv to. I mean, to Yivam. I mean.
So let me say it again. I'll say it as many times as we need to get it clear. You have two women married to one man. They are all part of his home. If one of them is an erva to Shimon, and the other one isn't, okay. So although we completely clearly understand why in this case Rachel, who is Shimon's daughter, can't be his do yibum with him. That's obvious. It's his daughter. But why is Leah, who is a completely random woman, who happens to be married to his brother, who is now falling to him in Yibam, why can't he do Yibam with her? And the truth is, logically, he should be able to, because she's not an erva. She's not one of the ones listed in Achremos. She has a place for Ishus. Everything we built should say. So the answer is the Torah says, litzra. It says, the Isha alachosa lo sikach litzra, and the Gemara darshans, the drash, it's that no, like we explained, the zika that exists isn't between this woman and the brother and this woman and the brother. It's the house. The house of Reuven, in this case, has a zika, right?
No matter how many people.
So if there's 30 wives and one of them is like, is the odd duck out who happens to be related to the brother, that brother, it kills the whole thing for that brother.
Yeah.
Okay, so now once we
Only for
understand,
that brother, or the entire thing is knocked out.
So, but can they get Yibam aside? Can they get married?
Of course not.
A year later.
each one of them are now a regular, normal wife of his brother, which Eishes Ach is Aser.
Oh, so they've been
Eishes Ach is always Aser unless there's an opportunity for Yibam. If there's no opportunity for Yibam because one of them is an Erva, then they're all back to a regular, normal Eishes Ach. Of course they can't get married. In fact, if they got married, it wouldn't work. If they had sex, the child would be a mamzer. 100%, yeah. That is the unique chiddush of Yibam. So we've just gone from Yibam, we explained Erva, then we spoke about what's referred to as a tsaras Erva. Tsaras are two wives married to one guy. Tsaras Erva is the Torah of an Erva. Rachel was the Erva. Tzara is the co-wife. It's really no good way to explain it. Tzara is the co-wife. It's the second wife. Try to imagine like an Amish family with 12 wives.
Or any wife after the first one?
It's not first or last. They're all co-wives of each other.
Right.
Rachel, Dina, Sarah, Miriam.
So what is it?
So the Erva is the daughter, let's say, to use that example. The Tsaras Erva is the other lady, the co-wife.
Right, but the Erva means that they don't have to, is it a better way to, I mean, just.
Co-wife is the word.
Right.
Co-wife is what a Tzara is. A Tsaras Erva.
The Erva part.
What about
it's the wife, you're saying?
Okay, we're going to do it slowly. Yeah? You have a husband. Husband, in this case, we'll call him Reuven. Reuven is married to two women, Rachel and Leah. Rachel is the daughter of Shimon. Okay, Shimon has a daughter who marries his brother. His brother happens to have another wife, Leah. Who is she? I don't know. Lives in West Palm Beach. Met her, got married. Completely unrelated.
Let's go.
Now Reuven dies.
Yeah.
Shimon, a brother who normally has a mitzvah sibum to marry, have sex with one of the wives that Reuven left over. So Leah is a perfect opportunity, perfect candidate. Leah is not related to him. He can do yibum with her. Problem is that Leah's co-wife is an erva. They are tsaras of each other. She's my tzara, she's my tzara, right? But one of them is an erva. One of them is, Hebrew we would say mufka. She's completely removed from the entire conversation of yibum. Once one of the members of the bias of Reuven are removed, they are all removed. So that means whether there's 2 wives, 3 wives, 10 wives, 12 wives, if one of them is an erva, then all of them are now gone. Meaning the zika is never there.
Only to him, or does there's another brother?
If there's another brother, the Zika still exists.
Oh.
As long as that third brother, Levi, let's say in this example,
There's no
just poof, we created him, there's no erva. All
Right.
12 wives can technically marry Levi. And since meaning they technically have issues with him, there's nothing,
Mhm.
no external reason for them not to marry him, and therefore they're not free to go. They cannot do anything with Shimon. Shimon is free from responsibility. Now you'll ask a very smart question. What happens if
Levi dies.
No, what happens if Levi does Yibum with one of the wives? Let's say, in the example we just gave, let's say he, not Rachel, make it complicated, he does Leah, right? So he does Yibum with Leah.
Okay.
And let's say Levi already has a pre-existing wife. We'll call her Miriam. Yeah. So Levi had a wife, Miriam. She's from Seattle. She's a Balas Tshuva. Yeah. So he was married to this Balas Tshuva. Then all of a sudden his brother Reuven died. Right.
Shimon
Sorry.
got married.
Right.
Yeah, Reuven died.
Reuven died. He got me confused.
No, we're not going to be in trouble. Reuven's the one who starts the thing.
No. Reuven was the first one that died.
Yeah, that was the first one.
No.
Married. Thick line is
That
married.
was the first one.
Right.
Okay,
No, you
here's
confused
Reuben
yourself.
dying, but if
Reuben
you-
was the first one that died.
Yes.
Now we're discussing the second one.
I got it.
Okay. Well, okay. We were discussing the second one.
Yeah.
So there were two brothers. One was knocked out, and one is okay.
Yes.
Where
Now.
the second one was
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're discussing.
So yeah. So
Okay.
I don't know that one.
And what's the story?
so I'm going to wait.
Oh, yeah.
There's no point in me talking
Yeah.
about people are talking.
Yeah.
I can't do it if you're talking on the side. It really makes it confusing for other people. So
Levi marries.
we have to make sure we're on the same page. I don't want to just come in the middle and that's just going to make more questions. Reuven is married to two women, Rachel and Leah. Shimon, his daughter, is Rachel. Okay, there's a third brother, Levi. Levi's married to Miriam. We'll get to her in a second. Yeah. Reuven dies, leaves over two daughters to Shimon. Shimon is pater from Yibum. Why? Because one of them is an erva. So Rachel is his erva, it's his daughter. Therefore, not only is Rachel going to be excluded from Yibum, even Leah is excluded from Yibum for him. But if there's a third brother, Levi, who has a wife, let's say Miriam, and he says, well, I'm not related to Rachel or to Leah, therefore they do fall to him in Yibum. He's got to pick one, either do Chalitza or Yibum. Let's say he does Yibum, not to Rachel. Let's say he does it to Leah. Meaning now it turns out Levi has done Yibum to Leah. How many wives does Levi have now?
Two.
He's married to Miriam and to Leah.
Yep.
Miriam and Leah are completely unrelated to Shimon. What happens if Levi dies with no kids?
Oh,
He didn't have a
now-
child with either woman.
Now, none of the women that Levi's married to would you look at and say, oh, yeah, that's Shimon's
No,
cousin.
right.
They're completely
Right.
unrelated to Shimon.
She was once a Sarah.
Leah was once a co-wife
Right.
of someone who was
Right,
usher
right,
to
right.
Shimon.
So what
But
happened?
she is now
Right.
not that. So
Well,
you might
I would
think,
that he's allowed.
of course,
Yeah,
that's the,
Right.
nope. That's a
Once a
tsaras
Sarah makes a
Sarah. So there's this erva, tsaras erva. So the erva was Rachel. Leah was the tsaras erva. Miriam is the tsaras tsara erva.
Got it.
All right, let me ask a fundamental
One
question.
second, before you go there.
Okay.
What if there's a fourth brother? What if there's Yehuda? What if Yehuda has a wife named Dinah? And instead of, like Shimon can't do Yibum with any of Levi's wives because he's pater, but what if Yehuda went ahead and did Yibum with Miriam, in our example? Meaning someone who's now, not only was she not a co-wife with an erva, she was only a co-wife of a co-wife who was a co-wife of an erva. Right? Yehuda now, who has a previous wife, this goes on ad infinitum. If there's, I mean, obviously at a certain point, check your mezuzahs, but
right.
but fundamentally, yes, that Saurus relationship
What's the
continues. So here we get to, I think, really the end of the Hakdama, but the beginning of understanding the first Mishnah, which tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem will. No, we have a little bit. We have a couple of minutes. We can maybe start talking about some of the ideas. A tzara, if you think about it, okay. Now it's learned from psukim. So the answer is it's a pasuk. It doesn't say latzur. It says latzror. The Gemara explains that it means not only a tzara, it means a tzara. Okay, fine. That's wonderful. That doesn't help us in understanding it. So what did we say before? We said before that if you ever have a woman who is normally an eishes ach, she's normally your brother's wife. Normally that's an isser kares. For instance, again, it's just back to the first principles. Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven has a wife, Rachel. If Rachel and Reuven have a child, now all of a sudden, if Reuven were to die, Shimon can't be with Rachel. Why? Because it's his brother's wife. Kares, no problem. That means that let's say you have a scenario where Reuven was married to our example before of Rachel and Leah. Rachel is Shimon's daughter. Reuven dies. Now, we said before that Shimon, because one of the women is an erva to him, the other one is also off limits because it's the bias that he has to have the zika with. Well, okay. If I were to ask you right now, if Shimon were to have sex with Leah, what avera is he being over on? Meaning, the normal Isser Eshesach is always in the background whenever.
Charis, she says, Charis.
Right. So that means that's an Isser Eshesach that has not been removed, that exists for Shimon, that exists forever, that never goes away, like every one of the other ervas. So that means now, in our example of Reuven and Shimon and Levi, if Levi jumped the gun and married Leah, did Yibum with Leah? So who is Leah to Shimon? Not his relative, but she's an erva. She's an Eshes Ach of Reuven, even now. Let's follow that again, right?
But it's always Eshesach.
Unless Yibum says it's not an Eshesach. So if a woman falls to you that you can't have Yibum with because she's completely removed from the parsha, well, now she's no different than your daughter.
You have to distinguish. The fact is that he thought that he had, meaning, does you saying that Yibum doesn't, meaning Yibum, he's potter from Yibum, saying that the parsha of Yibum doesn't apply, or you do not?
In this scenario, we're having the conversation from the perspective that potter from Yibum means it doesn't apply. And therefore, the Isser Eshes Ach is always in place. So that means every tzara, even if she's not actually related in the way we would refer to as it being related, she's technically an erva. What erva? Eshes Ach.
But now we have a
And
question.
always, that's always the case. So just 1 second.
So your example, that guy gets knocked out. The other brother, the third brother gets knocked out. You're saying possibly because Eshesach.
So it's only an Eshes Ach for Shimon, right? Because Levi never had the relationship that Shimon had with Rachel, in our case.
Correct.
So therefore, Leah to Levi is completely fine.
Both of them.
When Reuven died, Levi was allowed to do and had a mitzvah to do yibum with both either Rachel or Leah. In fact, when he did it with Leah, he's his full-fledged wife now.
But Levi died. Now
Levi dying now has Leah and let's say Miriam falling to Shimon.
Back to Shimon.
And since Shimon is now facing Leah, who 2 minutes ago in our example was Eshes Ach, that never goes away. So he has an Eshes Ach falling to Yibum, which is an erva. So it's still, so really the technical way to say it is every tzara is just a tzaras erva. They're always a tzaras erva. It's just that the very first one is one of the 15 listed in the Mishnah. Everyone after that is a tzaras Eshes Ach.
Okay,
now,
so,
1 second. So I know believe me, this lays the seeds for lots of questions. Now, this point that I just made, the lumdus, Rabbi Akiva Eiger on the Mishnayos lays this out. And he asks it as pretty much like the bomb kasha, the tzarech iyon gadol of Yevamos is what do I need a pasuk for? If what I just said is true, that exists before the Torah says anything, right? Which means what do I need a pasuk for? Why does the Torah need to tell me that tzara is aser? She'll always be aser because she'll always be just an eshes ach, always ad infinitum. So why do I need a pasuk? That's his bomb kasha on Mishnah, on our first Mishnah. And because of that, that starts the conversation, similar to what you were mentioning before, about how do we truly view the woman who is pater from Yibum? In all scenarios, it's not the same. Sometimes it means there's no Yibum at all, and the Isser Eshes Ach comes back. Sometimes it seems like it's just that it's usher to do Yibum with her, so therefore you have to do Chalitza. Sometimes it's going to be that that maybe like this scenario over here where I need a pasuk.
And you do chalitza. Why would chalitza apply if it's also to do yibum?
Let's say it's a kayan with a grusha. He's not allowed to do yibum, but since it's possible to marry her, there's a zika, and therefore you need something to remove the zika.
So what do you need a pasuk for, even with Yehuda and
yeah, well, every one of them will be a tzara of an Eshes Ach, because once she no longer has the special dispensation of yibum vis-a-vis Shimon, right? So what is she? She's an Eshes Ach. That's what that's how he
was another brother.
Meaning every one of the brothers, when they die to Shimon, she's an Eshes Ach. That Eshes Ach would apply to the other brothers. I mean, again, Yehuda can do Yibum with Dinah and all of them because he has no relation.
The Eshes Ach is from the original brother, not from the second brother who just died.
Yeah. The first time, let's say in our example, Reuven died, the Leah, meaning the non-relative of Shimon, because she was in the same house with an erva, she now no longer has a heter of Yibum. So what is she? She's the wife of his brother.
Never.
She's an erva.
Could you answer that you need the pasuk to say that Yibum was not knocked out? It's just that the pasuk comes to tell you that it's an usher. Not that the Yibum doesn't exist.
Okay, so let me ask you the following question. That's a
Okay.
very good question.
Yeah.
So what would be the halacha for the second bia? Meaning that would explain the first bia. The first bia you're mutter to do.
Okay.
Why are you now allowed to?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to stay with her?
He's saying the active evil.
Active Yibum, fine.
Mutter. Okay. The
Fine.
Torah says it's mutter. Okay, now the second time. A week later, are you allowed to have sex again?
No, the fact is, whether meaning after he's done Yibum.
Yep, the act. Yeah.
So after he's done, it's not just an act; it's a kinyan.
Okay.
So the pasuk came to tell you that original kinyan was us. The fact that he did it, okay, the evidence kosher.
Okay. I'm waiting for the question.
I'm saying that the second time, it would always connect to the first time. It wouldn't be continually. You'd be doing the same thing 100
Each act has to be understood. What am I doing? Is this woman an Eishes Hach or not? If she's my
She's
Eishes Hach,
not.
why not?
because
Was she married to my brother?
Because Yibum applies, she's not an Eishes Hach.
But Yibum doesn't apply. She's a.
No. You were hunter from Yibum, but Yibum applies.
What does that mean?
Meaning that
Don't get me wrong. There's a plenty of opportunity for subtle alumnus like that. But
what I'm saying is that
if the Torah says that erva, does it apply to erva?
No, we know that.
I'm saying it's not erva.
And I'm asking about erva. Erva, does it apply to erva?
No, we said that. It's the
Right.
rule. It's the
In
main
erva, there's no
rule.
yibum, right? That you understand.
Right.
Okay, so like a daughter.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Torah of the erva. What is the
that? We have a special pasuk to learn that we don't have it, but the fact is that you.
Okay, so
it works.
once you have once I have the pasuk telling me there's no yibum by her.
No. The pasuk tells you that you can't do it. It doesn't tell you that Yibum doesn't nachal.
Where do you find that? What
Where are you? Where are you? What is that I'm saying? You're making the assumption that Yibum was not chal. I'm saying that there's a real possibility that Yibum. No. Yibum is chal.
What would it mean that it's chal?
Meaning that she's now his wife.
Not.
What do you mean she's not?
Shazika, it's not a wife anyway.
Is there a chalitza requirement?
Maybe.
Let's say it would be just Reuven and Shimon.
Okay.
Is there a chalitza requirement to the Torah?
You say that.
According to you, there should be a chalitza requirement because there is a yibum thing.
Right.
According to me, there should be a chalitza requirement.
Yeah.
Therefore, since
There is none. It's the first thing in the Mishnah.
there is no chalitza requirement.
Zero.
Okay.
Efes bilchul gailenu. Nothing.
That's why that's why you need the pasuk.
What are we doing? Pasuk,
Right,
tell me
right,
tzara,
right,
tzara,
right,
tzara,
right.
tzara.
Pasuk
Every
tzara.
single tzara is going to be a tzara of an eshazach.
But the tzara was not an erva.
Now it is. Once I don't have a heter of yibum, what is she? She's my brother's wife.
Right.
She
This idea, by the way, is not an easy idea. But once the bowling ball flips and the idea drops in, you'll start realizing the reason why tzara, but people think it's so confusing. It's really not that confusing. Every single tzara is a tzara of an erva. What's the erva? The first one might be bito, but everyone after that is eshasach. I'll give you here. Let me flesh it out. Let me flesh it out. Yeah, guys, think about the following case. This is going to be one of the things we're going to discuss tomorrow. This next example is going to flesh the idea out. There's something called, Rabbi, pay attention, yeah? Eishes ach shaloi hoyo ba'olama. Okay, there's a little bit of a complicated case. There's an entire parak devoted to
Well, they
it.
never had sex.
He was
No.
never born.
So let's say you have three brothers. In our example before, we assume Reuven, Shimon, and Levi grew up like the Gronkowski brothers. Okay, they're all living in the house, playing football together. What happens if you have Reuven and Shimon, and their parents got Randy late in life? They got a younger brother, 20 years younger than them. But before that brother was born, Reuven dies. So everything's the same. Reuven is married to Rachel and Leah. Okay, Rachel and Leah. Rachel is, in our example, okay, is Rachel is Shimon's daughter. Nothing's changed. Okay, now Reuven dies.
Yeah.
Shimon
Shimon
can't do it. He's
Shimon is
knocked out.
pater from Yibum.
Right,
Yibum's
done.
over, right? Okay.
And no other brothers.
Now, sorry, not daughter. I take it back. Restate the case. No relation. Reuven dies, leaves over
Shimon has
two
to do it.
completely kosher Yibum wives to Shimon.
Zika.
Right. Shimon makes Yibum with Rachel. Right.
Okay.
Now, before the Yibum is done, Levi's born. Levi's born in between Reuven dying and
The
Shimon
next day,
doing the
the
Yibum.
next day.
Yeah. So that means when Levi was born, he never crossed life with Reuven. They were never brothers at the same time. They share a mother and a father, let's say, but they were never brothers at the same time. And let's say now Shimon dies. And who was falling to Levi?
The baby.
Rachel, yeah, right.
Right,
Rachel, who was once Reuven's wife, Reuven, his brother's wife, and some other lady. Yeah. Is Levi required to do Yibum or not?
Is it the baby you're talking about?
Yeah, meaning when he becomes bar mitzvah. Does he have to
And
do?
she has to wait 13 years.
Let's
They
say.
get stuck in this.
Let's we'll leave that on the side for a moment.
Understand.
But yeah, so now you have Levi. Levi's brother Shimon dies. Shimon left him 2 wives. One of them used to be married to Reuven, right?
I would.
Wait, let's just flesh it out. Pause. Just I want to flesh out the ideas.
Yeah.
Because if I go with you and I lose 4 people, it doesn't help. Yeah. Okay. So Reuven, Shimon, and Levi.
Yeah.
Reuven was once married to Rachel.
Yeah.
Reuven died before Shimon married her. Before Shimon Yibam, Levi's born.
Okay.
Okay. Now Levi's born
Fine.
are Levi and Reuven brothers.
Yeah.
Technically, they share parents, but they never
Cross life.
made l'chaim. They never met each other. They were never alive at the same time.
Right.
Shimon goes and makes Yibam with Rachel. Let's say Shimon has another wife, Miriam.
Fine.
So now Shimon is, for the next 10, 15 years, for whatever reason, he can't have kids. So Miriam and Rachel, eventually Shimon dies. Now Levi's 15 years old, whatever it is. And Shimon, his brother, dies, leaves over his wives. So this is a perfect case of Yibam, right?
Okay.
You have 2 brothers. You have a guy, 2 brothers. One of the brothers has 2 wives. He dies childless. It's Levi's responsibility to do Yibam. No Yibam. Why not? Because one of the girls was once married to his brother, and she's an Eishes Ach. I thought Yibam takes care of Eishes Ach. It only takes care of the Eishes Ach with the guy who the Yibam is with Shimon. The Eishes Ach of Shimon, the fact that she's married to Shimon, Levi's good with. But this was also once a woman married to his brother Reuven.
So it's like
It's an erva. It's exactly the same thing. Eishes Ach shalei hayu ba'olama. This case is really almost the exact same thing as like a tsaras.
Because he never did the act of Yibam.
He couldn't have because he was not alive. He never.
Shimon.
Yes.
He didn't do the act
Had Shimon done the act of Yibam before Levi was born,
Yes.
then Levi's being born into a world where all this woman is Shimon's wife. It's specifically because she existed before. That's a little bit more of a wrinkle in the halacha of I don't want to go down that road right
when
now.
Reuven died, he wasn't around.
No, Shimon could have done Yibam, and he dies without doing Yibam, and that's the example.
No.
Shimon
married
did. Shimon did Yibam.
Oh,
Shimon
Shimon
did
married him. He
Yibam.
married him.
And now Levi, the younger brother, is.
Oh, then
Shimon
died.
died.
And
And now 2 women are falling to
and
Levi.
Shimon had no kids at all.
No kids.
And these women didn't have kids, either of them.
Exactly.
His original wife and the Yibam wife.
Correct. Now Levi has 2 women falling to him that he's completely unrelated
One
to.
was once
The wife. One of them really said better has been married to 2 of his brothers. So the second brother, he's allowed to marry his wives. Because of Yibam.
Yes.
But the first one, he never was around to have the mitzvah of Yibam spoken to.
So next
He wasn't alive yet when Reuven died. So therefore, those
But
women,
even though she's already the wife of Shimon, because they're both the wives of Shimon.
But she was once
doesn't matter. The heter of Yibam that he has with Shimon's wife doesn't help him for Reuven's wives.
But it's not considered Reuben's wife anymore. It's now Shimon's wife.
But
Once
for a
never,
moment,
never.
when Reuven died, that woman was a woman who was an Eshazah.
So it doesn't change her status then from the original.
Exactly.
You're saying
And therefore, when Shimon dies with those 2 daughters,
Yeah.
so 2 wives, one of them who was a previous Eshazah makes the other one a Tsaras Erva.
So you're saying that if he was born while the first one was still alive,
Yeah, it's no problem.
Yes. Then
Then
that's our first case. Then there's no Eshazah Shalai Ba'alamo. Then of course he could do Yibam in both of them. Must do Yibam in one of them because they're both not relatives.
Wow.
That is the
And
discussion of
Sarah means
Tsaras.
anytime, what is it?
Co-wife.
Say it again.
Co-wife is, try to imagine it as
And
a guy-
co-wife, and if one of the wives has a problem with
Then
the
all
guy,
of the
everybody's
co-wives.
knocked out.
Yeah.
It's over.
correct.
And that's a universal concept.
Across the board, yeah. Now,
The entire Masechta.
the entire Masechta, yeah. In fact, the complication amongst many, but one of the major complications is going to be, and again, I'm just addressing what he was touching on, is when one of the women, when one of the co-wives, one of the tsaros, cannot do Yibam, we have to figure out, does that mean there's no Yibam, no Chalitza, no nothing, there's no Zika? Or no, there is a Zika, but he can't do Yibam for an external reason? And every case...
That's what he's talking about before, right?
Yeah. But in terms of understanding tsaras, tsara, which is what the people get all worked up in, oh my gosh, it's so complicated. And it is. But again, think about the way to think about it. Despite Rabbi Kiva having a question, the lumdus, the thinking that he's utilizing is very helpful. Every single tzaras erva, tzaras tzara is a tzaras erva of an eshesach.
Done. Knocks them out.
Always an eshesach. Because if there's no mitzvah of yibum, then what is she? She's just a regular old vanilla wife of my brother. And a wife of my brother is one of the ervas that are listed. And therefore I have to be concerned for that woman.
This is all on here. What is this? What is this?
So what I was going to do here, this is tzaras tzara. If you take a look at it, it's pretty straightforward. And I was thinking this would be a good way to sort of make the graphic jump from my chapshlap one that I did in my house to the book. Let's turn to page.
Thank you.
Let's turn to page. We'll use Bito. We'll use the first example in the Mishnah. So we'll do. It's the first page. Let's turn to page 3. First case. Okay. But don't look at it. First, I want to show it to you by mine and side, and then we'll do the transition to see it in here. And I think that'll be the best way for us to be introduced to the way the
Page
book.
3?
Well, keep it open to page 3, but look at my sheet first. Yeah.
Three.
All right. So look at my sheet. Yeah. I did it in stages. There's 4 steps. If you look down the left side, right, I drew a line down the middle. There's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Step 1 is you have 3 brothers. Now, Rabbi, I apologize.
No, you did the other way.
I did it the other way.
How do you do it here? How do they do it here?
I didn't even look. I don't know.
But we gotta
You know,
be
Shimon
consistent.
dies all the time here.
But you have to pick one or the other.
Let me look.
I'm
Hold on.
telling you,
Okay.
every-
This does, the art scroll doesn't.
Shimon
I got it, I got it.
Dad,
Hello?
No, I did it exactly the way they did it here. I did it the
So
way-
they're doing the.
Yeah, they're having Shimon die. I did it the way they have
That's how
Shimon.
they're gonna do it also, okay?
I did it the way I did it here. I looked at it before.
Okay, good. Same way.
Okay, so let's take a look at my sheet. You have Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi. Yeah, Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi are brothers. They're brothers
How do
from.
we read this? Do we read step 1, step 2, step 3?
Yeah, we're going from the top down and from the left to right. Okay.
Top down, left to right.
Okay. So the top line has Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi across the top. They're 3 brothers. They share a father at a minimum. But for now, we'll just assume they're all regular, normal, run-of-the-mill brothers. Shimon is married to 2 women, Rachel and Leah. This should sound familiar. This is exactly the case we discussed outside without the diagram. And I wrote in the parentheses next to Leah, so next to Rachel, that is the daughter of Ruvain. Meaning Shimon married Ruvain's daughter. He married his niece. Who is Levi? Levi is the 3rd brother, and he's married to Dinah. Dinah is just a random woman. Yeah. So Levi's married to Dinah. Shimon is married to Rachel and Leah, one of which Rachel is the daughter of Ruvain. Next step, Shimon dies childless. Okay. So if you take a look, I've crossed out Shimon. He's dead, and there's 2 women left. Those are called a Yevama. Each one of them is called the Yevama. You have Rachel and Leah, and let's remember Rachel is the daughter. So now, Ruvain, let's take a look to the left. Rachel is his daughter. That's an erva. Therefore, she is no longer capable of doing yibum with Ruvain. Ruvain and Rachel are off limits because Rachel is his daughter. And by extension, Leah is also off limits because she is the tzara of the daughter. She's a tzaras erva. Therefore, neither of them fall to Ruvain for yibum. In fact, the only one who can do yibum with either one of them would be Levi. So let's take a look to the right. I drew a dotted line to express that both Rachel and Leah, it's entirely Levi's choice to choose who he wants to be with. And once he does the act of yibum, then Dinah gets a co-wife. And they're allowed to be married to each other. They're allowed to both be married to Levi at the same time. Levi is unrelated to Rachel, and he's unrelated to Leah. Therefore, he can do yibum with whoever one he wants. And if he does yibum, that's the next step. Step 3, Levi chooses to do yibum with Leah, let's say. I specifically chose that one. Again, it's very obvious, by the way, that if Levi chooses to do yibum with Rachel, then this scenario is much simpler because then Rachel is Shimon's daughter, right? Remember that. So that means if Levi dies, it's obvious that he can't be. The chiddush of this whole case is that Levi did yibum with the non-relative of Ruvain. Sorry, keep on doing that. No, of Ruvain. Right, and so since he did it with the non-relative of Ruvain,
Shimon, you mean?
No, in this case here, we switched up the names.
Oh,
yeah, because in the book they switched the names. The rabbi, you threw me for a loop, Rabbi, before, but when
art scrolls off.
Well, okay, so there's different ways.
Art scroll is off.
Art scroll is
Art
off.
says Shimon
Yeah.
dies.
You can't use the art
this is the
scroll.
case that we were just discussing, right?
You understand the people who are following art scroll?
Yeah.
Are messed up.
If they're listening to someone who's
Because they can be looking on the bottom.
When did Shimon die? At what point does he die?
he dies right away, immediately. He dies, and now these These are not his wives. These are, I'm just
These
explaining.
are Reuven's wives.
No, these are Shimon's wives. Shimon was married to Rachel and Leah. Start with Reuven's not married to anyone.
I got it.
Shimon dies, and now I'm establishing both of these women are off limits to Reuven. He cannot do any
Right,
Yibum.
because the
Rachel is his
Erva, one's a
daughter,
Tzara.
and Leah is the tzara of the Erva. So
right.
therefore, he can't do Yibum. He's
Right.
excluded from the parsha. He's still a brother.
But
So Levi
Levi's-
can choose either one. He's unrelated
Got
to him.
it.
Now Levi chooses to be Miyabem Leah,
Right,
who's the unrelated
right. Of Shimon,
to
right.
Reuven.
Yes.
And now Levi's married to both Dinah, his previous wife,
Yes,
and Leah,
Understood.
none of which are related to Reuven. Leah
Correct.
is-
Because one was he chose not the non-daughter.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, Rachel, she went wherever she went, and Levi's married to Leah and Dinah, two unrelated people to Reuven,
Okay.
and now Levi goes and passes away.
Okay.
So Levi passing
And no,
away,
no one has
and,
kids.
and no one has kids, obviously. Otherwise, the
Yeah,
whole conversation
right,
goes away. Dinah and Leah fall to Reuven and Yibam, or do they? Because remember,
It was
Reuven.
a Torah Serva.
Well,
Right.
So since Leah was already Leah here was already excluded to
Yeah,
Reuven.
you said no matter
Yeah, this
what.
is
You
exactly
once a Tzara, always a Tzara, no matter what.
Exactly, because of Eshesach. So if you take a look, so why is Leah not going to fault him in Yibam? Because she's a Tzara Serva, meaning she was.
She wasn't a Tzara Serva because she was Ashes Ox. Tzara Serva because she was the daughter.
Well, she was no, that's not. No, this is Leah. Rachel was the daughter.
Right.
Leah's the Tzara.
Yeah, but Leah,
of the,
right, correct.
Tzara
correct.
Serva, yeah.
Oh,
So Leah's the Tzara Serva, and who is Dinah? She's the Tzara of the Tzara Serva. We call that a Tzara Tzara.
and what happens on that? Does that also
knocks
no
it
matter
out.
what,
Keeps on knocking it
any
out.
relationship
In
is
fact,
on?
Dinah, if
Yeah.
you think about it right here,
Yeah,
is really a tzara of Leah, who is really the erva of Eishes Ach. Because once she no longer had the mitzvah Yibam here, she became an Eishes Ach forever. And
good.
this goes on ad infinitum. It never stops. So if you want to see it in the book that we bought, yes, you can see it, how it's
Yeah.
expressed.
Tomorrow we're actually starting the
That's true.
Gemara.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
of course.
Tomorrow we're starting the Gemara.
Yes, from the Mishnah. And a lot of these ideas are going to be repeated because the first Mishnah, effectively, the entire Mishnah is discussing this case.
This is the same thing you did here.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
All right.
Take care, guys.
So look, let's take a look. Let's take a look in this book here. So if you'll take a look, you'll see if you want to use your little shortcut guide here, you can.
Oh, yeah, we got it.
I kept mine in my thing.
It's not in.
But basically, the guy with the beard and the hat's the husband, and the lady with the tickle is the wife. The little white line attaching them means they're married, right? So let's say there's no need, and they don't put their name down. It's page 3.
Could you hang it just 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
Where's the guy?
I don't know. You could probably go get more if you know.
They're not in here.
I don't know. I just kept the one you gave me when you gave me the book. I don't know.
I thought they were all inside the box.
I don't know.
I don't see them.
You can borrow my guide if you want to take a look. You want it?
Sorry.
Well, you go back to the story.
Maybe I didn't bring the guide. Oh, it's probably in the bag. It's probably in one of my bags.
All right, so bring it tomorrow. Okay, let's just take a quick look, right? And the reason why I did it the way I did it is I wanted to familiarize ourselves with the case of Sarah outside in our heads, because the more we get used to that seemingly heavy lifting of keeping track a little bit in our heads, the chart will immediately become clear the moment you look at it, versus having to I don't want to turn Masechta Yevamos into studying charts. That is actually not the goal. The goal is not to be able to study charts. The goal is to be able to study the Masechta. You have to take a call.
No, I want to take a picture of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so here we have.
I would start with this side. This is
So who's these are?
okay. So let's start from the top, and they do it in a similar way. See how they go sequentially, order 1.1, 1.2. That's time. What happens first? What happens second? What happens third? Right. On the left side, the box is describing what referenced in the Gemara is the diagram describing. At the very top of it, it tells us on what page in the Gemara it is. So it'll say on Daf Beis Amud Aleph in Yevamos, right? In the Mishnah, there's a list of women. One of them is Bito, right? At the top, it's mentioning the actual words in the Mishnah. It gives us the diagram with, on the left side of it, an actual Hebrew writing of what's happening at each level. And on the very bottom of the page is where he'll quote the psukim that are relevant to it, the lines in the Gemara that it's being discussed, and he might quote Rashi's here and there if it becomes helpful. But for our sake, let's ignore the bottom and let's just focus on the picture on the top. So you have here the man, which is the guy with the beard and the hat, married, white line across is a healthy, kosher marriage that still is intact with a woman who's wearing a tichel. So that is always going to be a man and a woman who are married. The two downward lines means those two people are sons of those two people, which inherently then means they're brothers. There is no indication connecting two brothers other than the color of their bekasha. Yeah, their Bekasha here has the same pattern. We'll see if Reuven and Shimon were to be brothers from, let's say, their father, but not from their mother. We'll see that later on. You'll see that one side of Reuven's Bekasha will be the pattern of the father, and one side will be the pattern of the mother.
What is it?
The pattern. You see the lines that are being drawn. You see how they're drawn sort of like that.
Yeah.
If you just open up to any random page, you'll start noticing that the patterns of the Bekasha will change.
Why?
Because the right side is going to reflect the father, and the left side is going to reflect the mother. We're keeping it simple in this case, but in later cases, you'll see that it'll change depending upon if the father and the mother, let's say, for instance, you'll have two brothers that are brothers from a father, but not brothers from a mother. So their right side will be the same, their left side will be different. Okay? But in this case, to keep it nice and simple, Reuven and Shimon look exactly the same. That means they're brothers from both the mother and the father.
What is the difference?
Oh, on page 13.
On any of them. You could literally open up to almost any page and you'll see it.
Go to page 13. Show me. I don't see a difference.
Yeah, look.
What does that mean?
You see the stars there.
On page 13, you see how Reuven's left side has a white with black dots and Yosef has black with white triangles.
Yeah.
And on the right side, they're both the same pattern.
Yeah.
So that means Reuven and Yosef are brothers from their father, but not from their mother. You see Yosef is the daughter of son of Rus, and Reuven is the daughter of Leah.
Okay.
So that would be an example of Achim that are both brothers only brothers from their father, but not brothers from their mother. There would be Yibum relationship between Reuven and Yosef if one of them died with no kids, but they don't share a mother, and that has nafkaminas in other areas. So let's get back to page 2 just to keep it simple. So okay, so you have two guys, Reuven and Shimon. They're brothers, right? And how do we know that they're brothers? We see that they have the same pattern on the right side, right? The left side, for our sake here, is irrelevant. It happens to be they're also brothers from the same mother. And the next step down, what they do is they gray out the people who are not being introduced. They only keep the people. That doesn't mean they're dead. That means they're still alive. Just they don't darken them so that they make you focus on what's actually happening during that stage. What's happening during that stage is Reuven. In this example here, I don't want to get too complicated, but instead of it being a white line between Reuven and his wife, who they don't even name, the reason why they put the X there is because that actually means an onus, a rape. It's a little bit more of a complicated reason.
Why would you do that?
So I don't see the X. Where's the X?
On line 1.2, the X is
not
on
a
the
regular
line.
marriage. It's a regular marriage. This is a
So Reuven rapes a woman who has a daughter.
Right, now why is it an onus? I'll just explain quickly. One of the other things mentioned in the Mishnah is going to be the erva of Bas Ishto, the daughter of your wife, right? Meaning, let's say even a daughter from a previous marriage. Well, the Isser of Bas Ishto will include your daughter also with her because she's your Ishto. So it's included in that already. So I don't need to mention Bito in the Mishnah if I mention Bas Ishto, because Bas Ishto is going to cover everything. So therefore, the Rishonim explain that Bito must be coming to tell me, even if it's your Bito from an Anusa. So that's why this case happens to have the X's there. This is true whether the X's are there or not. The point is that, you understand what I'm saying, Rabbi? Meaning it's only mentioning Anusa here because the Rishonim speak out on the Mishnah that Bito in the Mishnah actually is referring to the Anusa and not Bito from his wife, because Bito from his wife is covered in number 4 on the list. Yeah. So, okay, so what happens here? Reuven goes and marries a woman. Doesn't make a difference what her name is, and they have a child. Okay, that child's name is Chana. Now, that means Reuven has a daughter.
Yeah. I thought you said Reuben raped that woman.
So Reuven raped the woman, but they had a child. The child is still his daughter.
But you just said married the woman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to. By the way, he could marry her after also. Doesn't matter. The point is, but you're right. Correct. He raped her, but regardless, he had a daughter with her. That's what comes after. So that means we have a woman, Chana, who is Reuven's daughter. Okay. So we were saying it before, we just took it on as a double pasha. Yeah, Reuven's daughter. But so now we just met Reuven's daughter. Her name is Chana. So Chana is who we were referring to before as Rachel. Just to keep things the same. Yeah. So Chana here, the daughter of Reuven. Next step number 3. What does she do? She's now married to. Follow that white line to Shimon. All right. So Chana, Reuven's daughter, marries her uncle Shimon.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Now, Shimon already has another wife, Penina. So now Shimon is married to Penina and to Chana, one of which is Reuven's daughter, Chana, one of which is unrelated to Reuven, Penina. Now, next step, 1.4, the line through Shimon is indication that he died. He died leaving over no children, because you see he doesn't have any children under him.
Yeah.
So now, the broken line that exists between him and Penina and him and Chana reflects that death, because that marriage is now over. Because it ends with either get, or if it would be get, it would actually, I think, have the word get there.
They're no longer married. And therefore, the question now is, and here the way this Sefer uses it, the black dot on their face is reflecting that the question of the diagram is there a relationship of Yibum between the person with the black dot or not?
That's beautiful. That's so easy
Okay,
to follow.
so Ruvain has a black dot on his head, is someone who the question of Bito is, does he have Yibum with Chana, his daughter? Well, obviously the answer to that is no. To Penina as a tzaras erva. So if you read on the left side, I'll just read it in Hebrew. Kishem, just like Shechana, his daughter, Bito, Shal Ruvain Petura, she's pater, Kach Penina tzarasa Petura. Now, if you'll just take a look on this thing over here, when there's a white dot inside the black circle, it means they're waiting to find out, is this woman going to be a Yevama or not? When there's no white dot inside, it means Yibum was done.
Where's the white dot in the black circle? I have it on here. I think it's the white dot.
That's the white dot inside the black circle, and that's the black circle without the white dot.
Oh, yeah, I see the white dot now. Okay. So the white dot in the black circle is what?
The white dot in the black circle it lets us know that the person under discussion in that picture, the question is, do they have a mitzvah Yibum?
Oh, yeah.
And then without the white dot means Yibum was performed.
Oh, beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to just, we could do
Like
it.
that way?
You see how you got the white dot because we're certain the books have the white dot.
It means what? What is white dot?
White dot means what the person who's being discussed, do they have a Yibum?
And
when there's no white dot is they've done Yibum.
A black dot.
Yeah.
Black is.
If you want to, just for the sake of making the exercise, just come in a little bit. If you want to turn the page, we could do it again with the next one. And then I'm not going to do all 15, but we'll start with the 7.
Look, I wanted to show you something.
Yeah.
The person's going to use this book, use the art scroll. Look at this. Let's go.
They're having Ruvain done.
Look.
Yeah.
To illustrate, Reuben, Shimon, and Levi are brothers. Reuben has 2. Just the opposite of what you did.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
I did it. By the way, this is the way I was thinking in my head when I first learned it.
Right. He changed it.
But
he changed it.
No, the Steinsaltz is different.
Yeah. That's complicated.
I just did 40 dots from a Reuben.
Shimon is dead.
It'll change.
Shimon is dead everywhere. You see the X.
I actually think it makes more sense to make Shimon die.
Well, obviously.
Because Reuven, you always want to be talking about Reuven. Reuven's the first one that comes to your head. He's the one who's alive. Yeah.
Reuven is the one who's alive. Who is the problem?
Reuven is the one who's going to be having the problems always. Yeah.
That's the opposite of what the.
Now, if you want to just go through one more example, just you don't have to. I think it's helpful. Yeah.
Well, we're doing it tomorrow.
But I think for
I need all the help I can get. Like when you
we'll talk about it after.
I have a problem in my brain. I can sometimes
visualization. Yeah.
When you're saying things with the puzzle, I try, but I can't connect the dots in my brain.
Slowly but surely.
Now, especially with the dots, even here I have a big problem. This I was good with.
I don't think tomorrow when you do submission, you're going to do what we did on every single case.
I'm going to do the ones. No, I'm not going to do every one of them. I'm going to do the ones that are
do every one of
that
them.
are complicated.
Yeah.
Like Eishes Achav Shalei Hayabolam was a little bit more complicated. That's something we'll spend some time on. Chamoso,
Now I got to find those things.
You just spent an hour and a half. You know that.
Yeah, but it was a lot.
We're gonna have an hour and a half every day.
No, but Rabbi, most of today was a Hakdama.
I understand that, but every day you hope you're going to do it in an hour.
Yeah, we'll be fine. I don't know.
You can't do it in an hour and a half.
2 hours a day. Get here
Rabbi, positive. Stay positive. Positive thinking.
Let's get here 5:30. I would get here.
One second. You want to run through another case quickly? I want to see it.
Yeah.
Lumdus.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm ready for Lumdus.
Next case.
Do you want to open up the chart?
Yeah.
Okay. We can pick any case. Let's pick 7.
7.
Chamoso.
Page 7?
No, I'll tell you what page it is. Hold on. Chamoso is page 9. Okay. Let's start from the top.
Okay.
Page 9. This is mother-in-law, one of the Ervas, yeah? Chamoso. So the 2 people at the top, They have a husband and a wife. They have 2 kids, Reuven and Shimon. You see that Reuven and Shimon are both brothers from a mother and a father, because the Bekisha they're wearing are the same exact pattern.
Yeah.
Now, Reuven is married. Let's do it this way. There's another woman, okay, Chana, random woman. Chana and someone unnamed are married, and they have a child named Yocheved. Okay. Now Yocheved's father dies, and it's important that Yocheved's father dies. Why? Because Reuven goes and marries the daughter Yocheved, and Shimon goes and marries Chana after her husband dies.
Whoa, whatever.
Right. So step 1 was you have 2 brothers. Step 2 is that Reuven married Yocheved, daughter of Chana and some random guy. Yeah. Now who is Chana? Right now, Chana nobody. Right now, Chana is just Yocheved's mother.
Right.
So Reuven is married to Yocheved. Now what happens if Chana goes marries and Shimon? Now you have Reuven married to a girl, and Shimon married to the girl's mother.
Where do you see the picture 7.3? Shimon has a
So here, so there, you see
Yeah.
Shimon. See Shimon has a previous wife, Penina, and he goes and marries Chana, the mother of Yocheved, which means that now Reuven is married to Yocheved, and Shimon is married to her mother Chana alongside Penina. Now, what happens if, last case, Shimon dies? When Shimon is dying, so Penina and Chana fall to Reuven. Penina's okay. Penina's unrelated. But who is Chana to Reuven? Chana is Reuven's wife's Yocheved's mother, which is his mother-in-law. That's a mother-in-law.
Yeah.
It's only confusing because the charts got to get used to the chart. In my head, it's very obvious. Meaning to me, I would have just said it
That
as.
was easier without the chart.
I find it easier without the chart. You agree, right? And once you understand the relationships and you have the same names, the charts again. But once you get used to the chart, so when I said before, the charts are helpful, but I don't want to spend Masechta Yevamos learn charts.
Yeah. If you could have said without the chart, you would have said Reuven and Shimon are 2 brothers.
I would have just said Reuven and Shimon are brothers,
right?
And let's say we'll use the example where Shimon's always the one who's dying, right? So Reuven is the one who's going to be the thing. So I would say Shimon married Reuven's mother-in-law.
Shimon,
so
what?
I would have said Shimon married Reuven's mother-in-law.
Okay.
Shimon married
Reuven's mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So simple, right? The chart can complicate matters, but that's mostly because you're looking at Shimon married Reuven's mother-in-law. All you got to do is think about your own family. You have a brother. Your brother married your wife's mom. It can happen. It's weird, but but it can happen. And now Shimon goes and dies, and he has another wife. That's a tzara serva.
This one is the easiest one. Did you go through this?
Yeah, I didn't like it.
No, you didn't.